All right, we're still discussing CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers on the zone. Thank you so much for staying with us. Trinidad and Tobago Soca Warriors are among the 6 CFU teams advancing to the third and final round, despite their 2-1 defeat by Costa Rica in San Jose on Tuesday night. Well, the Twin Island Republic qualified by finishing second in Group B. They edged Grenada's Spice Boys on goal difference after both sides finished on 7 points, 5 behind unbeaten group winners Costa Rica. Grenada needed to beat St. Kitts and Nevis by 7 clear goals, but only managed a 3-2 win to close their campaign. Well, let's now hear from the TNT head coach Dwight Yorke, who made it crystal clear what the priority was for his team.
I think the night was about particular qualifying for the knockout stage of the World Cup, and we know that we were coming into a very difficult circumstances against a very good Costa Rican team. Over the years, the history between Trinidad and Tobago, the games are very tight, and so we expect it to be a difficult game. But our main aim, of course, we would have liked to have won the game, but our main aim at the end of the day was to make sure that we got to the next round of the World Cup. So as much as it's not the result we would have hoped for, we are delighted with advancing to the World Cup campaign.
Yeah, 2 wins and a draw and a defeat for Trinidad and Tobago in round 2. But they are through. Well, let's now get the thoughts of a man who helped them qualify for the 2006 World Cup. Defender, now SportsMax analyst, Brent Sancho. Welcome to the show, Brent. Brent, I don't think you know how much joy y'all gave me in 2006. I was still going to school. It was like the best day of my life.
Because you got a day off from school the next day, the holiday that proceeded afterwards.
Not only that, Brent, but it was so much celebration. You know, it was like a carnival, as you know, in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, no, and funny you say that, Mariah. The attendance that we had here in Trinidad in the game against St. Kitts is very indicative of the level of support that this team in particular has been getting from the public of Trinidad and Tobago. I jot my memory back to 2005 when Trinidad and Tobago played St. Vincent in a similar sort of situation where we needed a result to move on to the next phase, which was the Hex back then. And I can remember Maximus Dan singing his famous song to about 20 people in the stadium. And fast forward now to 2024, and this Trinidad and Tobago team needing a result against St. Kitts, and of course the attendance tabulated was 20,000 plus. So it shows you the level of expectation, the level of belief, the level of hope from the people in Trinidad and Tobago, and that has transcended throughout the squad. They are very heavily supported on the Twin Island Republic.
Yeah, Brent, we're in 2025, not 2024. So
That's
stop
correct.
taking us back in time. But yeah, what we saw from the Soca Warriors yesterday, and I think head coach Dwight Yorke, he said it perfectly, a lot of improvement within his team. And I'd love your take on that point, because I feel like now the Soca Warriors team looks like a team that you don't play with, you know, like a force to be reckoned with. What are your thoughts on that comment?
Has there been improvement? Certainly there has been. Certainly now, the team looks a team that has a bit more potency in the attack, very reminiscent of the likes of Leon St. Louis scampering down the left-hand side. That's what you see from Spicer for the most part, and like a Clint Marcel, and it's exciting play that brings people to their feet, and that's what young Dante Silly brought. And of course, Levi Garcia has proven now that he is a genuine threat to all CONCACAF defenders. So from an offensive point of view and for periods of the game, we have seen that. Yes, we have seen the improvement. I think the biggest question in everyone's lips throughout Trinidad and Tobago is whether or not the deficiencies, and that is, of course, our defensive frailties, is that going to be the Achilles heel that sees Trinidad not qualify for the World Cup? Because for all the positives that I can mention to you, and there are, a lot of them, that particular deficiency, that particular downfall of that Trinidad and Tobago team, that is one of the main ingredients you need to get to the World Cup. And it's just not there right now for this Trinidad and Tobago team. And it is a concern for myself, of course, as a former player. And I'm quite sure for Dwight Yorke as well.
Yeah, and what is, well, you mentioned that defensive frailty that the Soca Warriors have been experiencing, Brent. What would you do differently? I'm just going to put you in the shoes of Dwight Yorke now. What are some of the things you would do differently to fix that?
I think the fixable ones are, of course, the compactness of the squad. I think between the various departments, we're giving teams too much room. When you look at St. Kitts, they had two 1v1s. They scored 2 goals in the first, and a lot of that is because of the room afforded to players to maneuver and to operate. We need to be a little bit more compact. It need to be, when we are pressing teams, we have to be a little bit more organized in that situation. But here's the part of it, Mariah, that genuinely concerns me: the individual mistakes that have caused goals, not following runners or tracking runners, poor marking, ball watching. Those are things that a coach really is very difficult to coach. That is something that's embedded in a defender. It comes as part of a trait, a characteristic that a defender normally has. And some of our defenders currently are exhibiting things that you just can't have at this level of the game. And when you look at the goals conceded against Costa Rica in particular, and I could go back to the friendly in Ghana, they all have similar traits, individual errors. As I said, it's very, very difficult for Dwight to coach. It comes down to those individuals correcting that. And the question is, will they be able to do that in time for the more difficult phase of the World Cup qualifiers come September?
Yeah, Brent, like you, I have a lot of time for Levi Garcia. I think he's a top-class attacking player. And I want to ask you this because, well, two things. Because I find that a lot of players who are based overseas quite often don't deliver at the same level for their national teams in the Caribbean because of various reasons. But it is a consistent thing that I've seen for decades. He had played with AEK Athens before. He's now at Spartak Moscow, which is even further away. How important is it for Levi Garcia to be constantly available and ready to represent Trinidad and Tobago at the highest level? Because I see him as an impact player who can make a huge difference for TNT's World Cup bid.
But let me put it to you very simple, Lance. To what Stern John was for us in 2006 is what Levi is to this current team. Without him, I don't think they have a chance. And I say that to all due respect to the rest of players because of what he brings to the table. He is that type of player that revels in 1v1, 1v2, and even 1v3, like we saw last night against Costa Rica. He is a handful for defender. He runs at defenders at pace, and the only criticism you may want to, of course, put to him is that finishing product. It's not as defined as a Stern John was back in 2005, 2006. If he could get that, yes, but I think his importance to the squad is paramount. And there's been a lot of question marks over the last couple of months about whether or not he's committed to the team. He has missed games, of course, as we well know. He's just moved to a new club in Russia. And whether or not that availability come September, come in those crucial games, and of course, as you mentioned, his commitment levels is there. This certainly is a young man that does want to do well for Trinidad and Tobago, but sometimes with what we've seen in the past, it hasn't looked that way in terms of coming to games and making sure that he's committed to it. But of course, all that being said, without Levi Garcia, it is going to be more than an uphill battle for Trinidad and Tobago to get to the World Cup.
Yeah, and his move from AEK Athens to Spartak Moscow, how do you see that affecting his game and his development, whether positively or negatively?
Well, I think we've seen an upward trajectory for Levi from very well when he left his club and went to Holland, of course, and moved on to other clubs in Europe. We've seen him improve. He's become more dynamic of a striker. His explosiveness is still there. His 1v1 ability is there. So he's seeing upward movement. I'm a bit surprised, of course, that he's gone down that route to Russia, because I do feel he has the capabilities and ability to play at the very highest level. And that's, for me, is the EPL in England. But he's chosen this pathway. He has struggled a little bit, and of course, to settle into a new country, that does happen at times. But I think he's starting to really get himself into that experienced, seasoned striker. Again, I go back to the fact that if there was any criticism to be leveled towards him, is that you would like to see more of a finished product coming out of him, because the kind of situations that he presents himself in, because that's something that most strikers don't have, creating your own chances. He has that in abundance. He needs to do better on that conversion rate.
I want to ask you quickly about Kevin Molino, who is 34 years old now. He assisted on the Garcia goal last night, didn't he? And a high-quality midfielder, but I remember he had retired from international football back in September 2023. I guess mostly because of a conflict with then coach Angus Eve. But do you think at 34 and what you've seen from him since he's returned that he has a lot to offer this team? Because we know his quality, but he's getting on in age, isn't he?
But you have to give Coach York a lot of credit because he's not only played him, but he's entrusted him with a lot of responsibility. And boy, has he reveled in it. When you look at his contribution since coming back into the fold, it has been nothing short of astounding. He's dominated the local league in Trinidad and Tobago with Defence Force, where he's done very, very well. I would say he's had an MVP type of season. But I think what he brings to this Trinidad team is being able to spend time on the football when we're a bit under pressure. That experience, that streetwise, the ability to find a pass like he did with Levi Garcia. And of course, the ability to draw defenders and make clever plays like what you would want from a number 10. Very much a traditional number 10, very much a player that seemingly now is enjoying and looking like a player that's rolling back the clock a bit. And certainly a very important and integral part to the Dwight York team.
Brent, we've seen the pots, and we just showed a graphic of the pots that we're looking ahead to. Trinidad and Tobago is in the same pot with Haiti and Guatemala. There is a possibility of an all-Caribbean rivalry come the final round. Now, maybe the impression is that that's an easier path to the World Cup. I'm not sure if that's how you're feeling or people in Trinidad and Tobago feel if it's an all-Caribbean final showdown for that final round of qualifiers.
Well, look, I think when you talk about all Caribbean, things have changed a bit, hasn't it? Because when you look at that Curacao team with players that primarily play at the top flight in Holland, and of course a Jamaica team that is littered with players that play in the English Championship and Premiership, it is difficult. I think from a Trinidad and Tobago perspective, they would want to stay away from Panama. We've not done well against them. And Honduras has been a challenge. It'd be perfect if they got El Salvador as part of the group. I think it's a team that they can manage. And of course, looking further south, you would want Bermuda in your group, all due respect to them. But it does come down to that. It is really about the luck of the draw. Let's be honest, because at the hex level, everyone did play everyone. This is a lot different. And if you do get a favorable draw, as it relates to teams that you do match up with, it does give you every opportunity to come out. Because as you know, not just the top three teams go to the World Cup, but there's also places for the best second place.
Which means that Dwight York may be badly judged if this team doesn't qualify for the World Cup. Do you think that he's feeling that pressure, especially with the start that he's had so far with the national team?
Look, I think when this format came out, and of course, understanding that the three host team has already qualified, many in Trinidad and Tobago felt that this was our best opportunity to qualify. I would agree with that, Donald, but on paper, I think the team that Trinidad and Tobago has, and all due respect to the players that they have, compared to other countries, it is still a very difficult proposition. And you just have to go through the various teams and their squads and where their players play and the type of levels that these players play at. And you would see exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, on paper, it seems to be a much better, of course, pathway for Trinidad and Tobago and any other team that's trying to qualify because the big dogs are not there in Mexico, USA, and Canada. But from a Trinidad and Tobago perspective, you have to think that the type of players that we have compared to others, it will be a big challenge. And it's still a very, very difficult act. So from a Dwight York perspective, yes, he's doing very, very well. But however, when you get to this stage, and he's going to find out really soon about this team, because of course the Gold Cup starts very shortly, and he has the US, Saudi Arabia, and Haiti, and that would give him a very good gauge as to where he is. But I still think it's very, very difficult for Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, but Brent, it still feels good to be talking about the football. It still feels good to be talking about positive aspects of the football. I was I felt so good looking on the television when I saw how packed, of course, the stadium was and all of that. So we're going to just take these small wins and move along and see how we do. But thank you, as always, for stopping by on the show, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, guys, have a great one.
Yeah, Brent Sancho there, stopping by to talk Trinidad and Tobago football. Up on a break.